Hey Aaron, it's been 2 weeks since I first said that I would respond to your video about Ayn Rand's views about sex. It's been a long time. Work's been really hectic lately, but finally I got a day off, so got to put this together. It's kind of complicated. It's not exactly the kind of thing that I could just turn on the camera and ad-lib about. I would say that her views on sex are pretty well summed up by the passage that you read. Although I do have some reason to believe that her views are more complicated than that one passage illustrates. And I'll go into why in just a second. Let's see, I once had the same objections that you do. I used to think that I used to think that she just didn't take pure physicality into account enough. Basically, my objection was that she doesn't take into account the fact that sex is a biological, physical urge, and that it, sometimes urges just pop up, not in response to any particular person. I just thought that to confine it only to love was to miss the big picture. And what happened was I was actually missing the big picture. I was separating the physical urge aspect of love and separating that from how it actually manifests in human behavior. And she was talking about the whole thing. She wasn't just talking about the physical aspect. She was talking about what real people do when they choose their sexual partners. And I think that was the core of my particular error in interpreting exactly what she was saying. When I first read Atlas Shrugged, I was turning 20, and the talk between Francisco and Hank Rearden about sex was so foreign to me. I just decided that I was going to have to go back and reread it several times before I really understood what she was talking about. Actually, I had that experience a lot with Atlas Shrugged. I was a flaming liberal at the time. I met quite a few objectivists in college, actually, and I was talking to one of them about her views about sex, and I was discussing this concern that I had that she just didn't take biology into account enough. I offered him an analogy. I said, well, what do you think she would say about masturbation? Do you think she would be against it? And he goes, well, I don't think so. I don't really know, but I don't think so. And I go, well, and my response was, well, would she object to having a person there helping you masturbate? Now, looking back on that argument, it just seems transparently rationalistic, as if having the person there is of no consequence whatsoever. First, I want to acknowledge that Rand did say what you say she does. And all of the quotes that I have here are going to be coming from this talk between Francisco and Rearden. It's about maybe a third of the way through Atlas Shrugged. Second of all, I want to read from an interview that Nathaniel Branden gave. This is a story about a conversation between Ayn Rand and Leonard Peikoff. Nathaniel Branden says, I remember once being in her apartment when Leonard was there. He had acquired a new girlfriend, and Ayn asked him, is it a romance, or is it an affair, or is it an enjoyable sexual encounter? I don't remember the words verbatim, but she gave him a choice of 3. She also said it in a way that implied that any answer was acceptable, and Leonard almost fell off the sofa in shock. He said, you mean you would approve? Ayn said, why not? Anybody who had read her books would also have fainted. You're shocked, aren't you? And the interviewer goes, yes, I am. So apparently she wasn't such a total hardliner on sex being exclusively something that you feel in response to a particular person that you love. So I don't think that that totally sums up her views. So here is another quote from the Francisco's talk to Rearden about sex. On the subject of sex being only a physical urge. He says, he's talking about the kind of person who really is a womanizer, the kind of person that Francisco is making himself out to be to the world. He tells himself that all he is after is physical pleasure, but observe that he tires of his women in a week or a night. So the point of this is that if it were really just about satisfying a physical need, Why would it matter if he has the same woman throughout, for a long period of time? Why would he feel the need to, keep chucking them off and finding new ones? So anyway, that's one minor point about it. But again, her view of sex is that she's taking the whole big picture. She's not just saying, well, there's a physical urge, and she's saying what happens when you act upon this physical urge, what psychologically is going on, and what kind of choices does one make depending on what one's values are. She says that a person will be drawn to someone who matches their true value system, and that if a person's value system is out of whack, then their sexual choices will be questionable as well. I don't want to spend too much time on this point because it's not really what your objection was about, but I do want to point out that if a person has a strong sexual urge and decides to release it with someone more or less at random, some random person, that experience is not going to be a very good one. Of course, there are possible exceptions, like if someone happens to find someone who's very compatible with him, either just sexually or in some other way, at a time when he just wants to spread his seed, as you put. Generally, that kind of experience is not a fulfilling one, and I mean, the fantasy is one thing, but when you're talking about reality and how these things actually turn out, they're not so great. So there's a huge difference between the private release of these sexual tensions and doing this with somebody else. I mean, that changes the whole psychology of the situation, and this is what she's really talking about. You say you agree with Rand about what sex can be, but you don't limit yourself to that.